All good?
Yeah.
Three, two. Hello, welcome to the Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in the Meat Suit. I'm joined today by the fabulous Lindsay Banks, who is an intuitive, psychic medium, visionary leader and author. And hello, Lindsay.
Hi Mark, how are you?
Very well, thank you. So this is going to be about awakening, right? What's your awakening story?
So my awakening started back in 2017. And basically I had a really comfortable life. I was quite happy, do you know what I mean? Just tooting along, doing my own stuff. I was married, I had two small children, and then my best friend passed away from cancer. And I realized that I'd basically become emotionally numb to life. And it sort of started this ball rolling for me, in terms of waking up, as you say, and being like, right, who am I? Yeah, what is my place in this life? And asking yourself all those questions like, why am I here? What am I doing, etc. And since then, I suppose I've learned like a lot of tools, do you know what I mean, and which I share and which I teach and which I write about, which have probably stood me in really good stead for this year. So last year, at the beginning, I think it was around the beginning of 2019, I started doing some writing after meditations and getting these channelings through, if you like. And I was reading back on some of them, and some of them are in my book. And it was talking about the patriarchal system collapsing, and it was talking about the financial system collapsing. And there was all this stuff coming through that I was writing, and I was like, doesn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? At the time.
Only 3 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you think, why is this stuff coming through now? And I've got like a big piece of paper on my living room wall with just 2020 in the middle, and all the different things that I wanted to achieve. And for whatever reason, back in January, I'd written in the top left corner, expect the unexpected. And I was like, I'd completely forgotten about it. And it was only in May this year, and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, definitely this year. So I suppose my awakening started back then in terms of a spiritual awakening. Um, and then in terms of waking up to like everything that's been going on, I think there was a documentary that I'd watched by Janet, I can't remember her name, a Dutch lady.
Oh, you mean Full Cabal?
Yes, that was it, yeah.
That was only out this year, wasn't it?
You are? Yeah, that was this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I was watching it, like nothing that she said was surprising me.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think I've always had, I mean, I watched the interview you did with Peter yesterday, I was talking about Marilyn Monroe. And yeah, like I've been doing again, these people have been coming through and telling me their story about how they actually passed compared to how the media portrayed their passing.
Yeah.
So I did the Princess Diana. She came through when I was doing my yoga, and she told me she knew that she was going to pass because she knew too much. And I've had Madeleine McCann come through, and I've had like Abraham Lincoln, and my history, Mark, is absolutely crap, right? And what I've found is the more awake you become and the more that you ascend through these different dimensions of consciousness, your memory just goes. Yeah.
I've been finding I can't remember all sorts of words.
Yeah, definitely.
I
It's
mean,
like, yeah,
my kids say it's just because I'm getting old, but I think it's Ascension.
it is Ascension, yeah. So like memories that you may have, which are good or bad, have sort of been disappearing. So when these people have been coming through to me from different points in history, it's like they're having to tell me about the history bit, and they're like, we know you don't know history, Lindsay, yeah, but that's not your gift. It's not up to you to remember all these dates and times. We just want you to basically share our message. And all of them are people as well who've like spoken their truth but been executed for it basically in the past due to the elite, whatever you want to call them. Do you know what I mean? The powerful, the elite, or whoever they were.
I think we've got to stop calling them the elite because it makes them sound too cool.
Yeah, I don't know the right name for them at the minute.
Wankers.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's probably not an English word, because it's even that doesn't feel like enough.
It's not strong enough, really, is it?
No.
So, you had this spiritual awakening in 2017.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating, talking to people about spiritual awakenings, is it's always combined with a period of pain and loss, which I suppose is to be expected. But it seems that there is definitely a very deep spiritual connection between the people that are waking. I don't want to say waking up, because it annoys some people. There's a lot of people out there that are actually saying, "Why are people having a go at me for not waking up? I'm awake,"
Yeah.
And I feel, even saying I feel sorry for them, I don't want to say, because it's like patronizing. But I think it's when you start. I think there is definitely a correlation between a spiritual awakening and a kind of knowledge awakening, because you vibrate at a different frequency, and then you start finding stuff that you wouldn't have looked at before, because it opens you up, doesn't it?
Definitely. And I think, because what happens when you start to awaken as well is that, rather than using your right brain and the logical brain and needing to see specific proof and evidence of every single thing, it's like your left brain takes over, so your right brain takes a back seat. And instead, when you're watching these things or when you're hearing about them, it's like you're asking yourself, does that feel true to me? Does this feel that's something that is right? So, like, Trump is a Marmite character, isn't he? It's like, I love him, I know there's people hate him. But when he was voted into office the first time, I remember sitting there and I was like, there was all this uproar and people were like, I can't believe it. And I was like, he's needed. I was like, the reason he's there, he's got a purpose to fulfill. I was like, I don't know what it was, but when I watch him, when I listen to him, I know that he's doing the job that he was put on this earth to do. And a lot of the messages that I've been given as well through Spirit these last years, like, to be a fearless leader, basically, you can't care what anyone thinks of you. And he doesn't.
Well, it doesn't matter what you think of him. He's got balls of steel.
Exactly. Wow. So yeah, so I think there's that knowing that comes when you're doing the spiritual work, and rather than looking for scientific facts and hard evidence, you're going into sort of like your feeling. So like with Matt Hancock, I remember watching him and on a small clip, and I was like, I cannot physically watch this person, and
I can't watch him,
because I know that what he's saying is not the truth, and because I know that what he's saying, just, it's none of it rings true. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he knows it as well. It's interesting. I think it was David Icke that called this a post-fact society that we live in, and I think that's why Trump started calling news fake news, to try and wake everybody up to realise that all the mainstream is bullshit, basically, and has been forever. But was there a one thing that, people talk about going down the rabbit hole? Was there one thing that made you go, geez, that's really out there, that got you to the point where when you watched Full Cabal, you were like, oh, that actually makes sense?
Well, the fall of the cabal made sense to me anyway, so I could sort of see the Bill Gates connections and the Clintons and everything else. For me, the biggest oh my god moment was probably around Michael Jackson. So I was a massive Michael Jackson fan back in the day. I went to see him when I was 16. It was my first concert. I absolutely loved the guy. And I watched this documentary about how there was the possibility that he'd been cloned, and that actually, I watched an interview where it was a famous American interviewer, I can't remember what his name was, and he was interviewing this so-called burns victim who'd been to visit Michael Jackson's house. Have you seen this video?
I don't think I have.
Oh, I'll show you. But when this guy is talking, it's like, it is Michael Jackson. I know it's Michael Jackson. And he's got exactly Michael Jackson's voice. And in this documentary, they basically said how when Michael Jackson had been burned quite in this Pepsi advert back in the 1980s, that's then when they started cloning him. And I was like, it makes sense, because like the way his face changed, I mean, it went white, and then it's as if that was like a practice model. And to me, it's like the whole clone thing seems so out there, but then you've got the Star Wars movie Attack of the Clones. So it's something which, if I was to probably just speak to like, you know, someone in the street about it, they'll probably be like, oh my God, she's lost her marbles. But I get it, do you know what I mean?
Well,
It's like,
I was talking about clones the other day with somebody, and they were like, that sounds ridiculous. I said, how long ago was Dolly the sheep?
exactly.
30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and you know, the idea of using body doubles is not exactly new. I mean, it's in the Count of Monte Cristo, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know.
And interestingly, I went down the rabbit hole around these tests as well, and the company that manufactures the tests has links to a lot of the Bill Gates foundations, and the company that manufacture them have been collecting the DNA from plants and animals for the last 20 to 30 years. And they've cloned successfully 500 pigs just from collecting the DNA. So I'm like, why do they want our DNA then? So,
Well, you know, those DNA test companies, I was like, no, I said, do not do it. I won't even use the fingerprint thing on the phone. I'm
yeah,
like, that's my data. Fuck
yeah,
off.
yeah.
You know? But I do remember when I first came across you that I think you put up a post saying that everybody, all your neighbours thought you were bonkers, but your kids loved you, something like that. I'm giving bollocks to them, you know, and I'm just going to carry on. How's that been for you?
Yeah, so it's I suppose because I've been very sort of like I've been sharing stuff that I'm finding out about, like primarily through Facebook. And I've had some people who are like, yes, get it. I've had a couple of people who've unfriended me. I've been trolled for it, you know. People are like, well, load of bollocks, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. But I'm like, I do.
Yeah,
You know,
but you're very. That's what I like about you. You're extremely sure of yourself and sure of your opinions.
yeah. And
And
I think, again, through doing this work, I think when you stand, like when you know your values and your beliefs and you know what's true to you, it's so much easier to stand up and be like, I know that this is true, yeah, and I know that this is not right. So like in terms of like the masks, like I haven't worn a mask in a shop, and if I'm sort of like, if someone says, oh, you need to wear a mask, I'm like, actually I don't. And I can stand there strong in my belief, and you know, if they want to throw me out the shop, then they can do.
well, I found that as well. I mean, right at the beginning for my kids, I put one on and I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So
Yeah,
then I just sort of went. I had to shake myself down and go, right, I'm going into this shop, and if anybody, and just walk in with confidence.
definitely, yeah.
You know, there are some looking at you like, oh, what's he doing? And nobody's said a peep.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think if you're walking in with that confidence and being like, I'm standing in my power, do you know what I mean? Grounding and protecting your energy before you go in and just be like, I'm entitled to do this and I'm entitled to be here, then it's sort of, it helps you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you're sort of like maybe a bit unsure of what you can and can't do, or you're unsure of where you sit in terms of it, I think that sort of, you're sending that energy out, which is like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about this. So I was talking to a lady in one of my Facebook groups earlier, and I was like, find yourself another non-mask wearing buddy, do you know what I mean, if you need to.
Yeah.
And then if you're going in twos, you know, you're like, right, I'm safe. It's, you know, it feels more comfortable.
Yeah, 100%. And you were involved in organising some marches in the north of England.
Yes, yeah. So that was part of which fell right at the time. So I joined a group called Freedom for the Children, because I'm sure, like many of us, you know, we're sat there going like, oh my God, what can I do? You know, I've heard about these kids and I've heard about this. So I joined it, and initially I was going to go to the walk in Leeds, and then upstairs, or the Universal Spirit, they said, no, you need to organise one in York. So along with my friend Lizzie, the two of us just sort of like set it up, and I'd contacted the police, and I was like, look, we're planning this peaceful walk, you know. And he was like, well, as long as there's no more than 30 people, that's fine. I was like, no. I said, well, if there is, I said, I'll just split them into two groups. So one group's there and one group's there, you know, so there's ways around it. And yeah, so we walked through the city of York with the banners saying Save Our Children. One of the guys, Chris, said, look, let's go and stand outside the Disney store. So we stood outside the Disney store shouting, well, not shouting, but chanting, you know, Save our children are not for sale. And then we did a meditation at the end, sort of like to guide everyone and transmuting, you know, that anger and that fear into love and sending it back out into the universe. So I did that one, and I was asked to do another, but upstairs said that's not where your energy lies. So my energy now is around looking beyond these next few months and creating these conscious communities and spaces. So that's where I'm directing my energy at the minute.
I'm just interested though, when you did the walk, the interactions with the public, did they have any idea what you were talking about?
So some of them did. So we got a few cheers, we got a few like beeps from cars. So people who were aware of it understood it. And then we were handing out flyers as we were going. So I've been in the city centre since. So last weekend I was there, and there was a chap giving a talk and handing out leaflets. And I had a lovely conversation with a lady who was a Christian, who said, you know, we're not allowed to sing together in church, and obviously by singing together raises the vibration. And so some people, again, it's planting seeds, isn't it? And just starting those questions and those conversations going.
It's quite amazing. I spoke to a friend from London yesterday, and I said, you know, there were these amazing people in London at the weekend shouting down with paedophiles outside the BBC. He was like, really? Were there? And he lives in London. And it's incredible how quiet all of that's been kept.
Yeah.
Although there have been earthquakes this morning. Have you seen that?
I did see that. Yeah.
It's like underground bases being taken out. So do you still do one-on-one work with people?
Yeah, so my whole business is shifting at the minute. So I'm getting a new website. I'm going to be putting packages together, because I've realised that as I've been speaking my truth, and for me, what I can do is I help people sort of like align with their soul purpose, basically.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you specifically to do with during the pandemic. What have people been coming to you, you know, freaking out, or being, you know, what's been the problems that you've been asked to solve in the last sort of 6 months?
So most of them has been guidance, just like, you know, please tell me everything's going to be all right. But unfortunately, the main card that's been coming up for everyone is the Tower card, where it's like your structure's falling apart. Do you know what I mean? Everything is being blown apart right now. So yeah, so I've done a bit of healing, not so much, but the work, I suppose it's been sort of like reassurance, I think, has been the biggest thing. Just, you know, that everything's going to be okay. They're not going to die. And I think that's quite a big one as well for people. It's brought up, you know, so many different fears for people. So their fear of death, and it's like, well, if we start talking about death and creating conversations, and you know that your soul is going somewhere else when it passes, and it's not actually the end of your soul, it's the end of your physical body, then maybe that might help people come to terms with the idea of that. So it removes that fear, and it's like, what other fears do you have them in? So, you know, a fear of like losing my job. So you lose your job, then what happens? Well, I don't have any money coming in. So then what do you do? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe you think about starting your own business. What are your skills? What are your tool sets? And it's about, I suppose, working with people's mindsets around from the 3D way of doing stuff to the 5D.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next, actually, is like 3D to 5D. What can you explain your version of that?
Yeah, so for me, the 3D way is sort of like adhering to systems and adhering to these structures and routines that have been put in place for us to fit into. It's having the belief that there's a lack of money, a lack of food, there's scarcity, you know, that we have to listen to other people rather than listening to ourselves. Yeah. Whereas when we're sort of going up in towards this 5D, it's realizing that actually there's an abundance of materials for us. So be it money, be it food, you know, etc. And it's learning to listen to ourselves as well. So we have that knowing. So you mentioned the word earlier, opinions. And I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and he asked me for his advice. He's like, do you feel I should invest in this property? So I just said, no, I don't feel you should. And he was like, well, is that your opinion? I said, no, it's my knowing. I said, I know that for you to invest in this property is the wrong thing. And like when people can ask me questions about stuff, I just, it's a knowing. So I tune into my heart, and I'm just like, what's the right answer for this person? What do I need to tell them? Yeah. And it's not based on my mind or my logic, or, you know, I've got no idea about property markets, do you know what I mean? Or investments, but I know in my heart what feels right. So that's sort of where the 5D is going. So I suppose not fitting into a box, not being told what to do. It's not 9 to 5. it's working with your passions to find your purpose, you know, working with the skills that you have, and doing what you were born, like what you came here to do, basically.
Well, that's why I wanted to make these videos about awakenings, because awakenings tend to lead to you doing the thing that you wanted to do. Because you had a career in, you did business, didn't you, in Manchester?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my degree was international business, and then I went into retail.
The same building, not the same time.
Yeah. We went to the same university, didn't we? Because I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And then I'd had an article published in the magazine that you started, didn't I?
Yeah, well, I used to edit the magazine there, yeah. And so you did that for like, what, 15 years?
So I was in retail for, when did I start it? I think it was 8 years I lasted. But even when I was there, Mark, it's like, I always felt as if I was putting on this mask before I went into the building, and a bit sort of like holding my breath.
All these?
Yeah. Yeah, thankfully not that those, otherwise I would never have lasted 8 years. Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, and it was really difficult for me, you know, being in retail, because it was something that I felt I had to do, and that was sort of like, you know, your traditional life path. You went to university, then you got a career, etc. But yeah, you know, I had, like, there was managers telling me what to do, and then I had like customers, and I didn't know anything about energy, so I was just literally in this massive supermarket absorbing everyone's energy, going home just absolutely exhausted, like literally not doing anything. And I didn't have the tools that I needed to sort of get me out of that, really. So it wasn't until like I went and learned Reiki in 2002, and that sort of started me learning about all these different tools in theory, but not having to put them into practice until the shit hit the fan, basically, and I needed them.
Yeah, and then it just, so this intuitive side of your, you know, did that happen after the awakening, or were you always tuned in as a kid?
I think I was always tuned in, but I didn't know how to access it, and I didn't know what it was. Yeah, because I didn't have any role models around me. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know anyone who was on a spiritual path. Yeah, even sort of like when I was going through my spiritual awakening, I still didn't know anyone who was on like a spiritual path, and I was just like finding my own way through it. So yeah, which is like, so that's why I set up my Facebook group, Consciousness Arising, because I was like, it feels pretty shit when you're by yourself going through the spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I just thought, if there's a group, if there's a space where people can come together and even just be like, God, I'm having a crappy day, do you know what I mean? Does anyone know what's going on in terms of the energies? Then it can just help, and just to know that there's others that are going through it and you're not alone, I think.
I think it makes a massive difference, and you know, throughout this pandemic as well, just finding certain people who had the balls to speak about stuff was just amazing for me personally. And we need more of, well, not everybody's made to be a communicator, but if they are, stand in it and start talking and stop being afraid. And I know that your work's going really well, and you've helped lots of people. What was that Facebook group again? Consciousness Arising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the bottom of this. And what's your new website called?
So I haven't got my new website yet, but you can still find me lindsaybanks.uk, and I'm on social media, Lindsay Banks 111 on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. And
well, send me all the links. I'll put them in the bottom. But you know, I really appreciate that chat, and it's very interesting. And carry on with the great work. And I'll see you in 5D, shall I?
Yes.
Crystalline beings. I'm waiting for it to change. It's not quite changing yet.
Yeah, no, I don't think our physical bodies are going to quite fully change yet, but yeah.
Well, that's a shame. I like the idea of these med beds and regressing back 30 years, but we'll see.
Yeah, I love those.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mark, and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.